1Kings chapter 18, we are going to see what it means to walk with a limp. Now, you guys know that back on August 13th, I know because I was just filling out my insurance paperwork, I had a little accident out on the soccer field. Okay, I was trying to play soccer with the teenagers, and I was just reminded that I wasn't one any longer. And when I went up, I jumped, I came down in a twisting motion, and apparently when my feet planted, my body kept moving, and my knee was the weak point. And so if you remember, there was a sermon I actually preached sitting up here rather than standing because of the fact that I wrenched my knee. I had to go to the ER, got it looked at. Fortunately, he just said it's this meniscus issue, no surgery needed unless I really wanted it. And so I was like, okay, just rest it. So I've been resting it. I've been being a good boy. And I was out at the soccer fields with my kids, and I was not playing soccer. I was very proud of myself. As much as I wanted to and as good as I was feeling, I was only reffing. Well, somebody kicked the ball, and so I jumped to try and avoid the ball. And my knee again. So I had to limp off the field again yesterday. So I'm sitting on the sidelines, and I'm sitting beside a couple that's from another church. I know they're believers. And I'm like, wow, this is so ironic because of the fact that I'm going to be preaching about limping this Sunday. And God helped me to limp off the soccer field. It's just this great reminder that sometimes you can choose your limp, and sometimes you don't get to choose your limp. So we're going to be reading something that God revealed to me Monday at somewhere around 3:30 in the morning. I normally get up about 5 o'clock. I couldn't sleep well that night, so I got up at 3, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go ahead and go, and I had some time with the Lord, sat down, opened my Bible, and he gave me this sermon somewhere between 3 and 4 a.m. And this is one of the things that encourages me is when God breaks in, disrupts our routine, and gives us something. And we know it's like, okay, this isn't something I cooked up on my own. This is something God gave. And so I continue to work on it a little bit during the week, but largely this came in the early hours in the morning on Monday. And I'm so eager to share it with you because it's a very familiar passage, but I hope that you're going to see that there's something here that I had never noticed before. But God showed it to me here. And I'm hoping that you will walk out of here eager to limp. Okay? But to limp in the right way. All right? So, a little bit of background. I'm going to start in 1Kings. Oh, by the way, there's no PowerPoint. I think you guys do have an outline, very rough outline in your bulletin. Didn't put together a PowerPoint for this, so you're going to have your Bibles open. 1Kings, we're going to start in chapter 17, then we're going to go to chapter 18, okay? Now, a little bit of background. King Ahab is an awful, awful king in the nation of Israel. Israel is the northern kingdom. Judah is the southern kingdom. This is in the northern kingdom. And Ahab has married Jezebel. She is a Sidonian, a pagan, okay, and she is introduced Baal worship into Israel, and Ahab has just adopted this. He's worshiping Baal, who is the storm god, the god that sends rain and lightning, okay? So they're worshiping this god, and he's setting up shrines and around Israel so everybody else can do it too, okay? So they're worshiping Baal. Chapter 17, you're going to look at let's go to verses 1 through 3. Now Elijah the Tishbite, who was of the settlers of Gilead, said to Ahab, as Yahweh, the God of Israel, lives, before whom I stand, surely there shall be neither dew nor rain these years except by my word. And the word of Yahweh came to him, saying, go away from here and turn eastward and hide yourself by the brook Cherith, which is east of the Jordan. Okay? Pause right there. Elijah goes to the king and says, God has spoken that there will not be rain unless I say so for years. Well, that's not going to be a very popular message, and so God tells him, go hide out in the wilderness. Now, you know the story, you may remember it, that God sends birds, ravens, to bring him meat and bread in the morning and meat and bread in the evening, and he's supposed to drink from this brook, okay? So he's basically, he's bugged out, he's hiding out in the wilderness as all this is going on. Now, we're not going to go through a lot of the rest of the stuff in this chapter, okay? He eventually goes and stays with a widow. The widow's, she's impoverished. She's about ready to starve, as well as her son. Elijah says, okay, God will provide for you. Just, provide for me. And he lives there. And the oil and the flour don't run out. And it's like she's got this minuscule amount, and it just keeps coming out. Every time that she needs it, it just keeps multiplying. Miracle. Her son dies. Elijah prays for him, and he's raised back to life. And then it says in verse 24, It says, then the woman said to Elijah, now I know that you are a man of God and that the word of Yahweh is in your mouth. Okay? She has seen that God is real through the miracle that God did in her home. Not only through the ongoing food, but then the raising of her son from the dead. I know that God is real and that you're speaking for him. Okay? One lady learns this, but the whole nation needs to learn this. Okay? Now, let's go to chapter 18. Now it happened after many days that the word of Yahweh came to Elijah in the 3rd year, saying, go show yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the face of the earth. So Elijah went to show himself to Ahab. Now the famine was severe in Samaria. Samaria is the capital of the northern kingdom. Okay? 3.5 years, actually, we know from the book of James, it spells out 3.5 years it had not rained on the land. So of course there's no crops. Famine is severe, probably economic devastation. The nation was in a terrible, terrible spot. And Ahab knows that Elijah is the reason, or at least it's really God that's the reason, which is really because it's Ahab's sin that is the reason, but he's blaming Elijah. All right? Now, flip over here to verse 17. This is all background for where we're going this morning, okay? When Ahab saw Elijah, Ahab said to him, is this you troubler of Israel? And Elijah said, I've not troubled Israel, but you and your father's house have, because you have forsaken the commandments of the Yahweh, and you have followed the Baals. Now, then send and gather to me all Israel at Mount Carmel, together with 450 prophets of Baal and 400 prophets of the Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. Okay, Asherah was the female counterpart to Baal, like his consort. Okay, and so gather to me these 950 priests of these 2 idols, these gods that you have been worshiping, and then meet me out Mount Carmel. We're going to have a showdown. Okay. And so we're going to get to where we're heading with this, okay? So, verse 21, Elijah came near to all the people and said, how long will you hesitate between 2 opinions? If Yahweh is God, follow him. But if Baal, follow him. But the people did not answer him a word. Now, in my Bible, some of your Bibles may translate that differently. Mine says, how long will you hesitate between 2 opinions? But if you look in the margin there's a little footnote that says, here's the literal translation, okay? The literal translation is, how long will you limp on the 2 divided opinions? How long are you going to keep limping? Limping on 2 divided opinions, what's that all about? Okay? The 2 divided opinions comes from a Hebrew word that means to cut a branch. So if a person is handicapped and they need to have crutches, what are they going to do? They're going to lop off some branches. And so a person who has got a handicap, they are going to be limping along between their crutches. How long, Israel, are you going to keep on limping along between 2 opinions? I've got Baal that I'm relying on, or I've got Yahweh that I'm relying on, Yahweh being the God of Israel. Okay? Right now, you're hanging on to both of them. I'm going to have Yahweh claim to be his people, but we need rain right now, so who am I praying to? I'm praying to the storm god. I want him to send down the rain. You're looking at both of these. You can't keep limping between these 2 things. You've got to make a full commitment one or the other. Limping is not fun. I know some of you limp because of different problems with knees, hips, joints. You could have some back issues. For me, my knee got injured. Okay, I know what it is to limp. How long are you going to keep limping along? Everybody can see it. You're not hiding anything. You're dependent on both of these. You got to make a choice. Stop being a fence rider. Okay? Now, everybody knows that to sit on a fence, okay, and I'm talking straddling a fence, it's not pleasant. I remember back when I was in Fort Wayne, okay, Fort Wayne is originally a fort that was established, okay, and the community grew up around it, but they had a reconstruction of the actual fort up there in Fort Wayne. And so as a Cub Scout, I was able to go and stay the night there at the fort, our troop was. And so they showed us around and showed us these different things. Well, they have a device there called the horse. And the horse, if you can imagine, is normally a horse is something you kind of sit on like this. Well, this is 2 pieces of wood, or think like boards or plywood, that go up at an angle like this. Okay, so it's sort of shaped like the back of a horse. And so if a soldier was disrespectful, disobedient, what would happen to that soldier? You got to go ride the horse. So they would sit on top of it, and they would tie weights to the person's legs. Not comfy, okay? Especially for a gentleman, all right? You don't ride the horse for very long without it really messing you up. How long are you going to ride the horse here? How long are you going to straddle the fence? How long are you going to limp between these two opinions? You either go ahead and follow Baal or go ahead and follow Yahweh. You got to pick one. You can't keep hobbling along like this because it's not working for you. Make a commitment. Make a decision. Pick a side. That's what Elijah's saying. All right? So this is the limp of double-mindedness. This is the double-minded limp. I'm thinking this way, and I'm thinking this way. Okay? Double-minded. In the book of James, in chapter 1, it says, the double-minded man is unstable in all he does. Okay? Double-minded, it actually literally means like a split mind. Okay? It thinks like schizophrenia. Okay? I got this one thing I'm thinking, and I got this other thing I'm thinking. It's like, you can't do that. You've got to be fully committed one way or the other. Pick a side. Don't be double-minded, because if you're double-minded, you're going to continue to limp along. Okay, let's keep reading. Then Elijah said to the people, verse 22, I alone am left a prophet of Yahweh, but Baal's prophets are 450 men. Now, let them give us 2 oxen, and let them choose 1 ox for themselves and cut it up and place it on the wood, but put no fire under it. And I will prepare the other ox and lay on the wood, and I will put no fire under it. Then you will call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of Yahweh, and the God who answers by fire, he is God. And the people said, that's a good idea. So he says, let's lay out this challenge. We're going to show which God is really powerful. Because I know you guys everybody wants rain. Okay, so we're going to prepare a sacrifice to each God, and we're going to trust the God who's real is going to light the fire himself. We're not going to tend to the fire ourselves. Now, how had the people responded when Elijah had said in verse 21, I think it was, okay, pick a God. Which one are you going to follow? And what did the people do? I'm not saying anything, okay? Elijah's calling for it over here. Ahab and 450 plus another 400 prophets over here. He's saying pick a side, and the people are like, In my mind, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to pick a side because I don't want to suffer the repercussions if I'm wrong. Let's see who the winner is, then I'll place my bets. No, don't wait till the winner is, till the winner's clear. Pick a side now. Okay? But the people wouldn't do it. And so when he proposes this contest, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Then we'll know which side we're supposed to pick. Okay? So, that's the double-minded limp. Now let's take a look at another one, okay? This is verse 25. So Elijah said to the prophets of Baal, choose 1 ox for yourselves and prepare it first, for you are many, and call on the name of your God, but put no fire under it. Then they took an ox, which was given them, and they prepared it, and called on the name of Yahweh from morning till noon, saying, Oh, Baal, answer us. But there was no voice, and no one answered. And they leaped about the altar which they had made. Now, when it says leaped, it actually says limped. They limped about the altar, okay? So think of it as, if you guys have seen like Native Americans, they do this rain dance where they're kind of, bouncing up and down and chanting and stuff and going around in a circle. That's what they're doing. This is some sort of a ritual, but it has this limping motion to it as they're going around. So what are they trying to do? They're trying to get their God's attention. They're trying to do something religious here, work themselves into some sort of religious fervor to get their God to pay attention. So they're limping around. This is a man-made limp. This is your next point in your outline. A man-made limp. This is something that they don't have to do, but they're choosing to do it to try and rouse an answer from their God. And, of course, Elijah knows that Baal's not a real God, okay? So look at what he does. This is a little bit of humor that's thrust into this, okay? Verse 27, it came about at noon that Elijah mocked them and said, Call out with a loud voice, for he is a God. Either he's occupied or gone aside, or he's on a journey, or perhaps he's asleep and needs to be awakened. Okay? It literally, some of that could be, it almost seems like it's like he's turned aside like he's taking a bathroom break. Okay? He's really taunting them here. Okay? Now, verse 28. So they cried with a loud voice and cut themselves according to their custom with swords and lances until the blood gushed out on them. When midday was past, they raved until the time of the offering of the evening sacrifice, but there was no voice. No one answered, and no one paid attention. This man-made limp, this self-imposed set of rituals that they were doing was not going to get them anywhere. When it comes to trying to get supernatural intervention on your behalf, you can do all you want. But if you're crying out to the wrong God, it's not going to make a lick of difference. If you are all the religious fervor, all the ceremonies, you could get baptized 100 times. You can give everything you have financially. You could be in church 24/7. It is not going to make a lick of good if you're not directing what you're doing to the right direction. And quite honestly, with all these things, you could even be doing those things toward God if you're not doing them with the right heart or right motive. It's not going to make a difference. All of our religious activity that we do, pay attention to me. I want you to, please see me. God, am I a little bit louder? I want you to hear me, God. That doesn't get his attention. We're going to see what gets his attention here in a minute. But think about what you do to try and make yourself acceptable to God, to get his attention, to get his favor. If it is a man-made limp, if it's a man-made ceremony, ritual, it is not going to make any progress. What is God looking for? Okay, let's go ahead now and let's look at the God-given limp. This is your last point on your outline there, the God-given limp, and this starts in verse 30. Then Elijah said to all the people, "Come near to me." So all the people came near to him, and he repaired the altar of Yahweh which had been broken down. Elijah took 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob, to whom the word of Yahweh had come, saying, "Israel shall be your name." So with the stones he built an altar in the name of Yahweh, and he made a trench around the altar large enough to hold 2 measures of seed. Now we'll get to the trench here in a little bit, okay? I want you to notice something, and this is the part that really jumped out at me this week. Okay, he repaired the altar of Yahweh, which had been broken down. Now, we don't know if it had been intentionally broken down, like when they started worshiping Baal, we need to get rid of this other altar, or if it was possibly it had just gone into disrepair. Either way, worshiping God as he had instructed had ceased in this location, because they would have needed to have that altar in order to do so. So he repaired the altar of Yahweh, and how is that altar described? Okay, 12 stones according to the number of the tribes of the sons of Jacob. And how is Jacob described? To whom the word of Yahweh had come, saying, "Israel shall be your name." We could look at that and just keep moving on, but there's a story behind that. When Jacob gets renamed, there's a story. And it's a story that ties in more than what you might realize to this story. So let's turn back to Genesis chapter 32, because you've got to see this story to understand how it fits. Genesis chapter 32. Okay, if you remember, Jacob and Esau were twin brothers. Esau was the oldest, so he was supposed to get a blessing and a double portion of the inheritance. He'd get 2/3 of his father's estate. Jacob would get 1/3, plus he gets a special blessing. Jacob, through deception and through being an opportunist, had taken both of those things from his brother. And so his brother was so angry he wanted to kill him, so Jacob ran away. For over 20 years, he was gone. During that time, he got married, he got kids. He actually has 2 wives and 2 concubines and has 11 children by this point, okay? And he has become incredibly wealthy. And so now he is going back, at God's instruction, he's going back, and then he finds out that his brother Esau is on his way to meet him with 400 guys. So he is shaking in his sandals. So let's read something that, we're going to read a prayer, and we're going to read an encounter. Let's start with the prayer in verse 9. Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Yahweh, who said to me, 'Return to your country and to your relatives, and I will prosper you.' I am unworthy of all the loving kindness and of all the faithfulness which you have shown to your servant. For with my staff only I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies." He had divided his family into 2 groups at this point for safety reasons. "Deliver me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he will come and attack me and the mothers and the children. For you said, I will surely prosper you and make your descendants as the sand of the sea, which is too great to be numbered. God, I'm scared. I need you to intervene in my situation. What is he doing? He's coming to God in faith. God, I need help. He divides his family into two groups, so that way if Esau attacks one, the other one's going to escape. Okay, so he's not going to lose his entire family. He sends them across the river, and I'm a little unclear as exactly which side of the river, but I think he actually stayed back on the far side of the river at night. And then it says that he was alone at night. I want you to see what happens when he is alone. Jump to verse 24. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. Wonder who this man is. When he saw that he had not prevailed against him, he, that's this man, touched the socket of his thigh, Jacob's thigh, so that the socket of Jacob's thigh was dislocated while he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go, for dawn is breaking. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, your name shall no longer be Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him and said to him, please tell me your name. But he said, why is it that you ask my name? And he blessed him there. So Jacob named the place Peniel, for he said, I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been preserved. He knew who was wrestling with him. This would be a pre-incarnate form of Jesus. Okay? It was wrestling with him. And he gave him a new name. In the scriptures, a change of name is a change of identity. You have been one person, you are now another. You remember Abram? Okay, it means exalted father. You're no longer Abram. I'm calling you Abraham, which means father of many. That was a long time before he had any kids. He gave him a new identity, which was going to be born out later as he followed through on as God followed through on his promises. Okay? He's given a new name here, a new identity. You have wrestled with God and with men, and you have prevailed. Okay? And so God is interacting with him. He is blessing him, but he's doing something else to him. He touched the socket of his thigh so that it is dislocated. It is not an easy joint to dislocate your hip. But that's what he did. And so look at verse 31. Now the sun rose upon him just as he crossed over Peniel, and he was limping on his thigh. He was limping after his encounter with God. Why is this important when we're thinking about Elijah on Mount Carmel? You can go back to 1Kings 18. The people were limping between the two divided opinions. I'm going to keep my options open. I'm going to worship both of these gods. No, you got to choose a side. And then the Baal prophets, what were they doing? They were limping around trying to get their God's attention. You don't limp to get God's attention, not our God. He gets your attention, and then he sends you on away with a limp. He gives you a reminder that you are not the same person you were before you encountered me. You don't meet God and come away unchanged. When you meet him, he will change you. He changed his name. He eventually changed his character. But he also changed his body so that he had that limp that he was going to walk with, I'm assuming the rest of his life. We don't really know exactly how long that limp was there. We can try and manufacture the evidence of God's work among us. The Baal prophets, oh God, we're going to do all this stuff to get your attention. But how does God do it? He comes, he encounters us, and then he changes us. He gives us the limp. He gives us the sign that we have interacted with him. If you meet God, you will come away changed. Now, it may not be a physical limp like what he had, but he will change you. But what is it that brought about that encounter with God for Jacob? He felt a desperation in his heart, and he said, God, help. He came to God in faith, cried out of his desperation and his poverty, his lack. I can't fix this. I am in danger. I'm broken here. I don't have what it takes. I'm calling out to you, God. And God came and encountered him and sent him away changed. That's what God wants to do for each of us. He wants us to come and encounter him, but not on our own terms. We cry out, and he encounters us. And he sends us away changed. So if you are needing that kind of encounter with God, it is time to come to him and call out in desperation. Now, with Jacob, it was a crying out because of the fact that I'm in danger. My life is in danger. My family is in danger here. For others, it could be like Hezekiah when he had an incurable boil on his body, and he cried out to God, and God healed him. It could be a physical malady in you. It might be a family situation. It could be anything that's causing you to feel desperation, but it starts with us feeling the desperation of the fact, God, I know I'm not good enough for you. I know that I'm a sinner. I know that I have sinned. I am sinning. But God, I'm coming to you because I can't fix it. I have tried to be free of this. I've tried to do differently. I am not good enough. I'm still addicted. I'm still stuck. I'm still, I'm still a mess. And I can't fix myself. God, help me. Help me. God will come on his own terms, his own time, but he will change you. You're going to look different on the backside of it. I've seen it in my own family. I've seen it in my own life. I've seen it with other people. God will change you. And when you are changed, you will be an agent of change for others. Now, Elijah, we're going to finish this story a little bit, okay? We're going to have to finish this out because you have to see what God did here. All right? Okay, verse 33. Then he, this is Elijah, arranged the wood, cut the ox in pieces, and laid it on the wood. And he said, fill 4 pitchers with water and pour it on the burnt offering, the wood. He said, do it a second time. They did it a second time. He did it a third time. They did it a third time. The water flowed around the altar, also filled the trench with water. At the time of the evening sacrifice, Elijah the prophet came near and said, okay, now as we look at this, remember how we said, call out to God in faith. That's what Elijah's doing here, okay? O Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, today, let it be known that you are God in Israel, and that I'm your servant, and I've done all these things at your word. Answer me, O Yahweh, answer me, that this people may know that you, O Yahweh, are God, and that you have turned their hearts back again. He is not praying for himself. Okay, I want them to know that what I've said is true. I want them to know who you are and that you have turned their hearts back again. God, I'm crying out in faith for you to do what only you can do. Only God can change a heart. And then look what God did. Verse 38. Then the fire of Yahweh fell and consumed the burnt offering and the wood and the stones and the dust and all the water that was in that trench. Just burned it up. He showed that he accepted that sacrifice because he lit the fire to it. And when all the people saw it, they fell on their faces and they said, Yahweh, he is God. Yahweh, he is God. How long are you going to waver between two opinions? How long are you going to limp between which one of these is real? God showed up and he showed that he was real. And everybody's like, he's the real one. We're bailing on Baal. No more. Okay? And then Elijah says, here's what you need to do now that you know that Yahweh is God. Verse 40. Then Elijah said to them, seize the prophets of Baal and do not let one of them escape. So they seized them. And Elijah brought them down to the brook Kishon and he slew them there. When you know that Yahweh is God, it means that there needs to be some purging that happens. The wicked has got to go. The evil has got to go. When you come to God in desperation, God, I need you. And God comes in, he forgives you of your sin, he rescues you. It is time to clean house. No more of the cheating, no more of the porn, no more sleeping with my girlfriend, no more of mouthing off, no more of the foul language, no more of the coarse joking, no more. I'm not going to watch the same stuff, I'm not going to do the same stuff, I'm not going to live the same way because God, you have shown up and I know that you are God. Elijah, he was one who declared God's word, and God backed his word up. Now, I want to take you to one other spot here as we close. And we've been hitting this a lot, but I think that this is a spot that God has for us. Because this reference here, the passage we just read, is quoted in the New Testament, but in a specific way. Okay? James chapter 5, start in verse 13. Is anyone among you suffering? He must pray. Is anyone cheerful? He is to sing praises. Is anyone among you sick? Then he must call the elders of the church, and they're to pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer offered in faith will restore the one who is sick, and the Lord will raise him up. And if he has committed sins, they will be forgiven him. Therefore, confess your sins to one another and pray for one another so that you may be healed. The effective prayer of a righteous man can accomplish much. You want an example of that? Verse 17, Elijah was a man with a nature like ours, and he prayed earnestly that it would not rain, and it did not rain on the earth for 3 years and 6 months. Then he prayed again, and the sky poured rain, and the earth produced its fruit, which is what happens in the verses after we just read in 1Kings there. The storm comes. But he prayed that it wouldn't rain. He prayed that it would rain. God is able to do those things. He is able to bring the fire from heaven. He can bring the rain down. He can withhold the rain. God is powerful enough to control all those things. And if he can do that, he can certainly heal your body. He can restore that which is broken. We need to have that kind of faith when it comes to our bodies, as well as our nation, as well as our weather. We need to trust him. God can heal. So, well, you can come up. God is calling us to be a people of faith. He's calling us to be a people that will trust him, will call out to him. But I want you to look at these 3 limps. One, are you limping between 2 opinions? Are you depending on God, but also depending on something else? It could be a false god, okay? The Bible calls money, mammon, a false god. You can't serve 2 masters. You'll be devoted to one, love the other, despise the one, love the other, okay? You can't serve both God and mammon or money. Some of us depend on money as our God. Some of us depend on other things as our God. How will you know when? Take a stand, make a choice, and pick Yahweh alone. Okay? The other thing is, what are you depending on to get God's attention? Are you depending on your own work? You know, my own rain dance? Or am I going to depend on God to do things his way? Is he going to call me back to worship him according to his way? The 12 stones, the altar, that was God's prescription for worship. He got back to worshiping God the way that God wanted him to. And that was, he was referencing back to Jacob, the one who walked away with a limp because he had encountered God. If you need an encounter with God, choose him alone, call out to him, say, I'm going to walk forward new, and you give me whatever limp you want. Take from me whatever you want, as long as I have you. Lord, give me enough. So as we're singing this song, speak to God about this. Ask him about your limp. Do you have one? Is it the right kind? And if not, say, God, give me whatever limp you want. I want. If you want somebody to pray with you,